Lainey Taylor says, hope can be a powerful force. Maybe there's no actual magic in it. But when you know what you hope for most and hold it like a light within you, you can make things happen like magic. Imagine what kind of powers hopelessness has. Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I am your Innkeeper, and today we're continuing our Cosmic Horror Trope series. And today we're going to be talking about hopelessness. This video is part of an ongoing series where we're discussing the different tropes that are present in cosmic horror stories, sometimes known as Lovecraftian horror stories. In the last video, we talked about ancient godlike beings that are uncaring about humanity. Go check that video out if you haven't watched it already. Today, we're going to be talking about another trope that's present in a lot of Lovecraft stories, and that is the trope of hopelessness. If a person faces their own mortality, it usually causes a major shift in their behavior. Hopelessness is a powerful emotion and can often be mistaken for fear. They're not the same. Fear causes a certain type of reaction, fight or flight. Hopelessness does not cause either one of those. Hopelessness kind of creates a feeling of deep within oneself saying, there's nothing that I can do about this. Now, hopelessness is the feeling that the odds are stacked against you in such a way there's just no possibility of a favorable outcome, regardless of your skill level, equipment, or knowledge. The tricky part about hopelessness is getting the right balance. You need to hit a sweet spot when it comes to hopelessness. If you don't present it in small doses, it can quickly cause a person to slip into acceptance. Acceptance is a defense mechanism where someone who's feeling hopelessness will come to terms with their situation and just allow it to happen, regardless of the outcome. If your players reach that stage, you risk them losing interest in the situation. If you feel the players are reaching the acceptance stage, pivot immediately and present them with something that's going to give them a bit of hope and encouragement. This could be like a clue, an event, or an item that's going to allow them to think of new ways to overcome that obstacle. Whatever you do, do not bail them out completely. Otherwise, your players are not going to take it seriously that next time you present them with some similar situation. Now, on the other side of the coin, you don't want to present too many situations where hopelessness takes center stage, because you're going to risk having your players lose interest in the campaign as a whole. If they're hopeless too many times, they're just going to feel like you're beating up on them and that there's nothing they can do. So with hopelessness, it's like using salt in your food. Very small doses are good, too much and you could ruin the whole thing. Now, where do we see hopelessness in some of Lovecraft's stories? Well, one is The Call of Cthulhu. If you've ever read that book or heard that story, spoiler alert, if you haven't read it, it's 100 years old, but I know some of you haven't read it yet. There is a scene where one of the protagonists encounters this awakening creature from beyond time and space, and it is Cthulhu. It rises out of the sea, and it is so massive, it's indescribably large. The person is on a ship. He's on a little boat, and he sees Cthulhu appear. Now, it is clear that this thing cannot be stopped with guns. It cannot be stopped with anything that humans can use against it. So what does he do? He rams his boat into it. So that is something that hopelessness causes, because this person said, there's nothing else I can do. I can either try and ram into it, and maybe it'll hurt it. Maybe I'll die, but either way, it's a favorable outcome for me, right? If I hurt it, or if I die, at least I don't have to face the reality of knowing this thing exists. Now, the character does survive, but that is something that ended up happening with the outcome of the situation. But this is the kind of reaction that you want from your players when it comes to hopelessness. What you don't want is, say, if that character were presented with Cthulhu, and maybe he was surrounded by several Cthulhus, then if he was a player character, he might not even try ramming the boat, because what's the point? You got two other Cthulhus coming after the world. At this point, the guy might just sit there and give up, or throw himself in the water and just drown himself, right? So that's what you don't want from the players. You don't want to present a situation where they are no longer caring as to what the outcome is of the event. You want them caring, but feeling like, hey, okay, this is not something that we can overcome with what we've got. What are some solutions, even though none of them are going to be 100% favorable to us? What are some solutions that we can come up with that'll at least make it a little bit of a softer landing, per se, right? So it is a tricky trope, and it is one of the harder ones to pull off in Lovecraftian horror, but it is something that your players will truly appreciate. Now, one other thing I wanted to say about hopelessness and a lot of the tropes that we're going to be presenting in the series. The feeling of hopelessness is one of those things in horror in general where you want the players to feel it as well. So you want it to be a little bit more meta. You want their characters to feel it, and you want the players to also feel it on behalf of their characters. You don't want them to feel like, for example, if you use something that causes fear in the characters, the players aren't going to feel fear, right, necessarily. But hopelessness is not like that. You want the players to also feel that way because it'll amp up the feeling that we really need to do something here, and there's not anything that we can do that's going to be great, but there are some things that are going to be better choices than others. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions regarding this trope, I know it's a little bit of a harder one, please post it in the comments down below, and I'd be happy to answer them for you. Hopelessness is an awesome trope within cosmic horror because it signifies the insignificance of mankind, and that is another trope that we're going to talk about in this video series. But it kind of goes hand in hand because that hopelessness is kind of looking inside. You look inside of yourself and say, wow, yeah, I'm not the main player. I'm not the true hero of this story. There's nothing I can do really. So where to go next, right? So it's a really tricky one. It's a really interesting one, and I think it's an important part of cosmic horror. Try to present it to your players in your stories. I've written an adventure which will be coming out very soon, and it is a full campaign for Pathfinder 2 and Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and it's called The Horror at Ishizu Landing. And this story presents all of the tropes in Lovecraftian horror in their very raw forms, and I think that players who love cosmic horror will love it. So if you're interested in seeing these things put in action in role-playing games, check out my adventure once it releases. Subscribe to the channel, and then I will keep notifying everyone as more progress is made regarding the adventure. The full thing is almost fully written out, and then it's going to go to editing, layout, art is still being worked on, so it's still some time, but I'm going to keep giving updates to people who are subscribed to the channel. Alright guys, thank you very much. As always, any other comments or questions, leave them down there in the comments down below. And as always, I'm your innkeeper from the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk with you then.